I think we're going to start with watching this Trump speech. I think there's no better place to start. There's a ton of updates. I want to talk about American casualties, American deaths, and what that means. I want to talk about the friendly fire incident that shot down 3 American jets. I want to talk about Trump floating troops on the ground, that he responded to a question about whether or not we could see American servicemen on the ground in Iran. And he floated the idea like, oh, I'm not going to commit against it, and what it means, the positioning he's doing. I do want to talk about the oil price spike and what it means. I mean, we have tons of footage that we need to go through, and a lot more geolocated. Thank God GeoConfirmed has been working overnight to get information out there. So we're going to go through that as well. So we have quite a bit to go through. So I think we're going to start with Trump's new video statement after the death of 4 American service members. Now, at the point of recording this, the amount of American soldiers that were dead were 3 to 4, according to CENTCOM, which is America's command, its military command for the Middle East, in comparison to NORTHCOM, which has already been put on high alert due to a possibility of terror attacks on the American homeland. And there's already been one shooting in Texas, which, I mean, the origins of that shooting, the motivations of that shooting are not particularly clear, but due to the attire of the person involved, it is a possibility that these two things were tied together. And not that necessarily this was an Iranian plant, but it's possible that it was a lone wolf inspired, but we really do not know at this point. But CENTCOM said that there was at least 3 American fatalities at the point that Trump was doing the speech. Since he has done the speech, there has been 3 more. And we are at 6 American fatalities, as well as dozens of wounded service members in drone and missile attacks across American bases all around the region. The 3 jets that were shot down, thankfully, none of them ended in American fatalities or American casualties. All those people got to safety, and we do have footage of that in the kind of interesting local interactions that happened after these soldiers, these airmen, hit the ground. But none of those service members died. But those are the biggest examples of American hardware losses that America has suffered so far. Since the initial waves of attack that America has done, doing over 1,000 strikes in Iran at this point, they have struck missile reserves, launchers. Now the Navy, at least over 9 ships have been disabled. Donald Trump was making Truth Social posts about that in the last 48 hours, at least, I believe in the last 24 hours, actually, specifically. There have been other strikes on now police stations as well. And I think that strikes on representations of Iranian law enforcement, the capacity by which the Iranian state holds on to its legitimacy and its law enforcement capacity on the ground, keeping its rule of law, keeping its control on the ground, that has a different signal than necessarily blowing up missile storage capacity. And considering what Trump has been saying about revolution in Iran, I think we know the implication. Let's listen to Trump's speech.
News. The president is giving an update on social media about the strikes in Iran. Let's take a listen.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes.
I don't know what their naval building means. I don't know if he means like a ship manufacturing facility or if he means like a naval base. But that, naval building.
Iran's formerly supreme leader.
Also, the air defense is probably one of the most important target that they've gone after, because while Trump's making this speech right now, you can see American drones like above Iran itself. Drones that, if Iran had an effective, thorough, and dense manpad capacity like they had talked about, they should not be able to do this over Iran. Like this is, like, you can see that with your eye, right? That means that they should be able to shoot it down with manpads if they have it in the area. But that seems to suggest that either manpads have been, and you can see it firing actively. You can see it firing. That either means manpads have been not as dense as originally suggested by Iranian authorities after previous strikes against air defense in the previous throes of this administration about a year ago, or that they have lost significant capacity in the last 72 hours to the point where they cannot disable drones like this all across the country. That doesn't mean they have no air defense capacity. It just means they have probably greatly reduced air defense capacity compared to what they had at the start of the Trump administration.
Ayatollah Khamenei is dead. This wretched and vile man had the blood of hundreds and even thousands.
So I've been told by chat that it was the Naval HQ. I do want to say that I think he either forgot what it was or nobody really fully told him, because if he knew it was the Naval HQ, he would have said it was the Naval HQ. That sounds much better than naval building.
And vile man had the blood of hundreds and even thousands of Americans on his hands and was responsible for the slaughter of countless thousands of innocent people all across many countries. Last night, all over Iran, the voices of the Iranian people could be heard cheering and celebrating in the streets when his death was announced. The entire military command is gone as well, and many of them want to surrender into saving their lives. They want immunity. They're calling by the thousands. Combat operations continue at this time in full force, and they will continue until all of our objectives are achieved. We have very strong objectives. They could have done something 2 weeks ago, but they just couldn't get there. Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, even as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible.
That's the way it is. That's the way it is. The inspirational words, the leader of the United States president, after 3 service members died in a war that nobody voted for. That he has gone through his decision-making, unilateral, and his words about those who gave their life for his decision is it is what it is.
Where that won't be the case. But America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization. They have waged war against civilization itself. Our resolve, and likewise that of Israel, has never been stronger.
I don't know what he means by they've waged war against civilization itself. Does it mean due to the type of groups they supported in the way that they have openly targeted civilians? Does it mean their own targeting of their own civilians? Does it mean, which would make the most sense, trying to degrade the nuclear non-proliferation? But if that's what he cares so much about here, ever more reason to support Ukraine for giving up their atomic weapons. And then would that also mean that Israel is attacking civilization itself by illegally acquiring atomic weapons? Or India, after the standard was set? I mean, I don't know what this means.
Stronger. America is now, again, the richest, most powerful nation in the world by far. But the only reason we enjoy the quality of life that we do and the freedom and security is we have done things that others are unable to do. But it's because of warriors who are willing to lay down their lives to do battle with our enemies. And they do battle better than anybody. An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be a dire threat to every American. We cannot allow a nation that raises terrorist armies to possess such weapons, would allow them to extort the world to their evil will. Not going to let it happen. We're not happening to us, and we're not going to let it happen to others. The United States has the strongest military the world has ever seen. I rebuilt our military in my first term. There's never been a military like we possess. And frankly, there's nobody even close, but we are now using that military for good. We want to have it for good purpose. We're undertaking this massive operation not merely to ensure security for our own time and place, but for our children and their children, just as our ancestors have done for us many, many years ago. This is the duty and the burden of a free people. These actions are right, and they are necessary to ensure that Americans will never have to face.
Did you just say that this is the duty of a free people to, like,
This is the duty and the us, children and their children, just as our ancestors have done, but for our children and their children, just as our own time and place, merely to ensure security for our own time and place, but for our children and their children, just as our ancestors have done for us.
okay, so he's saying that we need to take out the atomic program and bomb Iran in order to secure the future for our children. So it's about, I think, atomization, the idea that they got a nuke, that this would be a threat forever, something you can't reverse.
Many, many years ago. This is the duty and the burden of a free people. These actions are right, and they are necessary to ensure that Americans will never have to face a radical, bloodthirsty terrorist regime armed with nuclear weapons and lots of threats. For almost 50 years, these wicked extremists have been attacking the United States while chanting the slogan, "Death to America," or "Death to Israel," or both. They are the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. We are the world's greatest and most powerful nation, so we can do something about what they do. These intolerable threats will not continue any longer. I once again urge the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian military, police, to lay down your arms and receive full immunity or face certain death. It will be certain death. Won't be pretty. I call upon all Iranian patriots who yearn for freedom to seize this moment, to be brave, be bold, be heroic, and take back your country. America is with you. I made a promise.
Mind you, if there is not significant defection from the IRGC, then what we would be asking is essentially a bunch of unarmed protesters to storm government buildings after we've bombed a few police stations, or enough police stations that they can't respond. We're bombing enough of the IRGC's like armored reserves so they can't send in like tanks and armored vehicles. Like it's I mean, trying to conduct a revolution through air power and telling the people the time is now is already an extremely bold decision. But how much air power are you going to put behind it? And for how long are we going to sustain that air power? Like, if they start trying to storm offices and they respond with infantry fire, what do we do? Do we bomb the infantry and then double up on the bombing to provide more opportunities? Oh, this is a gigantic program we've been signed on to unilaterally by the President of the United States.
Promise to you, and I fulfilled that promise. The rest will be up to you, but we'll be there to help. Thank you. God bless you to our incredible warriors, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Well, if we have God on our side, then I think we're good. Thank goodness he asked. Thank goodness. Also, one more statement from Trump that I think is important. Trump tells CNN earlier today, this is about 9 hours ago, that the big wave hasn't even happened. The big one is coming soon.
I just got off the phone with President Trump. It was a 9-minute phone interview, and we talked just about the war in Iran. I'm going to share some of it with you right now. The president said, quote, "We're knocking the crap out of them. I think it's going very well. It's very powerful. They've got the greatest military in the world, and we're using it." I asked the president how long he thought this military operation or war might last. He said, quote, "I don't want to see it go on too long. I always thought it would be 4 weeks, and we're a little ahead of schedule." I asked the
4 weeks and we're a little ahead of schedule, meaning that minimum he thinks roughly a little bit over 3 weeks. Mind you, Trump also said he would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. So his history of, oh, just wait 2 weeks, wait 2 weeks, wait 2 weeks, all of this would suggest that just taking his time frame at his word might not be the smartest.
president, if the U.S. was doing more than these military strikes to help the Iranian people regain control of Iran against the regime, to seize the country from the Iranian regime. And he said, yes, the president said, yes, we are indeed. But right now we want everyone staying inside. It's not safe out there. And then the president said, it's about to get even less safe. He said, quote, "We haven't even started hitting them hard. The big wave hasn't even happened. The big one is coming soon." We asked him about a bunch of other stuff, too, that I'm writing up, and we'll share later on the lead at 5 p.m.
Mind you, the United States has already bombed Iran at like over 1,000 times, tons of targets all over the country. Right, the stuff that we're getting out, like footage of and photos of, is either what the state government, like the state media in Iran wants to get out, or just leaks out. But we've hit a ton of targets in that time period. We've hit air defense systems, we've hit ballistic missile systems, we've hit the stockpiles, we've hit the launchers, we've hit their navy, we've hit police stations, we've hit naval HQs, we've hit IRGC HQs, we've hit bases that are above ground, we've hit bases that are underground. And it looks like we might have hit schools. There's other civilian infrastructure that there's questions of whether or not the United States was involved in hitting. Suspicions that the Abe Lincoln might have been involved in the bombing of the school in Iran that killed over 108 children. We'll talk about that later. The picture on that isn't particularly clear, but it does not look good. And obviously that means there should be a thorough investigation. But with this administration's record of transparency,
Burns
I'm not so
is
sure.
an immoral, morally corrupt, bankrupt man.
We've hit them all, Dylan, nothing left. That's not true. There are still some air defense systems left. There are still bases across the country. There are still IRGC locations across the country. There are still police stations across the country. There are still governmental administration buildings across the country. There are still, a capacity to produce energy in the country so the authorities could try to keep the economy afloat. There are still ways. I mean, they still have armored vehicles that they could put out on the street. We didn't destroy all of their armored vehicle reserves. If protesters tried to storm everything right now unarmed, wouldn't end well. But that's, of course, today on day 3. Thank you, T-Rex, for the primer. Did you see Pete Hegseth's press briefing today? No, I did not. Is it worth a watch? Is it worth a watch? But if we've already done all these types of strikes, what is the big wave? What's the big wave? Over 2,000 strikes in a short time period? 3,000 strikes? Is it the threat of going for a full toppling with one big series of blows? We don't know. Not know. It could also be a negotiating tactic for all we know. It could be Trump trying to scare the new authorities into negotiating with them. I mean, look at it from Trump's perspective. You black bag Maduro, and all of a sudden, Delcy Rodriguez is willing to make a lot of concessions in Venezuela's energy independence when negotiating with the United States. Maybe not so far on elections or not arresting political opposition. They'll let a political opposition out, member of the political opposition out. They'll say yippee. Some people will call it an achievement. And then 12 hours later, they'll arrest them on a different charge, right? But they have made progress. Maybe he's of the belief that if we take out the Ayatollah, make a big show of it, cripple their ability to respond, then maybe they would be more willing to accept a non-nuclear Iran, where not only are they accepting uh, no 60% enrichment, they have to go back to 20%. No, 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 for medical purposes. No, 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 3%. No, 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 not 3%. No enrichment. And where do we hand over the enriched material? Not to the Russians like they asked, but to the United States, along with a limiting or elimination of the ballistic missile program, which is part of the reason why they're going after the ballistic missile program so hard. That's what the administration wants. So there might be a belief that if we can intimidate them to giving that, then we won't need to waste more munitions. We won't need to waste more lives, more potential for failure, more American lives, Iranian lives, and no more wasteful use of air interceptors. Because let me tell you, all these Gulf states that are using American air interceptors and all these American bases that are using air interceptors, they're going to need replacements for that. And where are those replacements now not going to go? Those replacements are now not going to go to Ukraine. Will there be boots on the ground? No, it's a threat. I saw that Trump made that threat. We can talk about that threat next. It's another Trump statement, and it's in line with the other statements. Let's go to that one. Let's go to that Trump statement. Where is it? I think here it is. Trump says he would deploy troops to Iran if necessary. President Trump refused to rule out deploying U.S. ground troops to Iran in an interview on Monday, saying he would consider it necessary as the administration offered conflicting timelines on how long the military operation would continue. Trump told the New York Post that he does not have the yips with respect to boots on the grounds. By the way, that's a golfing term. He's essentially saying he doesn't got like that. He doesn't got the feel of it. Unlike previous presidents, he would not categorically rule out putting troops in Iran, adding that he probably doesn't need them, but would use them if needed. In the same interview, Trump said the operation was right on schedule, way ahead of schedule in terms of leadership. I guess that probably means that it's on schedule, and the only schedule we've heard is about 4 weeks. And when he says ahead of schedule in terms of leadership, he probably did not think we were going to kill the leadership of Iran, a lot of IRGC leaders, so quickly, immediately into the operation. Like he probably thought it would take a little bit more time. In his first public comments on the strikes in Iran, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also declined to rule out the deployment of ground troops during a press briefing Monday at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., along Chairman of Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane. When asked specifically whether American forces could be sent to Iran, Hegseth said it would be foolishness to expect U.S. officials to say publicly, here's exactly how far we'll go. We're not going to into an exercise of what we will or will not do. So, 555 people have been killed in Iran in strikes across the country, including more than 100 children at a school. It's been devastating for the Iranian people. 6 U.S. soldiers have been killed, dozens more wounded. Others in Gulf states have been killed as well. Civilians amongst their number, as well as a small number of civilians in Israel. Relative, of course, to the 555 people killed in Iran, many of whom are civilians. So, will Trump send troops to Iran? No. Now, I cannot tell you 100% he can't. If, for example, the Ayatollah, the new Ayatollah was super hardline and decided we're going to do some major terror attack on U.S. soil that we could actually tie back to Iran. You know, I could see there being very narrow exceptions if the Iranians felt like they wanted to use every asset at their disposal and somehow went much further than they've typically been able to go, because Iranian ability to infiltrate the United States has never been particularly that good or that effective. They've tried to go after members of the Iranian diaspora in the United States, and they failed. They tried to assassinate John Bolton in the United States, and they failed. So I think them pulling off an attack like this, a 9/11 style attack that people have warned about, I find it very unlikely. I think the lone wolf style attack that we saw in Texas, something like that being inspired, isn't impossible. But I don't think that it's likely that they are going to be able to pull off a 9/11 style attack, and that it probably would not be within the regime's interest. So noting that, I don't think that we're going to deploy troops in Iran. I don't think we're going to deploy troops in Iran for a number of reasons. Number one, Iran is a country of 90 million people. The IRGC is roughly 200,000 strong. The IRGC's militia is about 1 million strong. And with that type of dense, dense urban environments in Iran, that'd be difficult to fight in. And the mountains you'd have to get through in order to fight, to fight them in the first place, and the difficulty of maintaining supply lines over that mountainous terrain. I think it's not in the administration's interest, and the administration knows that in order to do something like that, they would need congressional approval. It's one thing to do something that happens so quickly that Congress and the courts can't respond, like a black bagging of Nicolas Maduro. It is another thing to engage in a multi-month military campaign to actually topple the entirety of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. These are two very different things, and how Congress will respond will be very differently. How the American public will respond will be very different. Before these attacks, the majority of Americans did not favor any war with Iran. An air war, a ground war. Right now we're in the air war period, but no war. Then once the operation started, we capped the Ayatollah. We dropped over 1,000 bombs before the casualties started to roll in. The vast majority of Americans were like, this is great, this is fantastic. And that's because the Americans don't really like the Iranian government, but they don't like the risk to American personnel. But when they see a quick win that they think we can get away with, they tend to go like, okay, great, you rolled the dice, you won, we'll back you now because we're at the winner's table, but don't bring us to the loser's table. But as we're now at 6 American casualties, and that number could likely continue to rise, that mentality amongst the American public will change with it. And if Donald Trump was to actually put U.S. service members on the ground in Iran, in that combat environment, in immense harm's way, he would suffer political repercussions for that. And the more American service members that die, the more that Trump, being the pro-peace president, is going to blow up in his face. There's already been presidents that have tried this before to campaign as, we're gonna reel everything in, and then kind of aim immediately in the other direction. Richard Nixon comes to mind when it comes to the conducting of the Vietnam War. Nixon is not remembered quite well when it comes to his legacy, both when it comes to some aspects of his foreign policy and like how Vietnam closed, how long the war continued after he got into office. Of course, the Watergate scandal, but I don't think that Trump, if he was to do this, would be able to do it on his own, which is part of the reason why I find it much more unlikely, because he would actually have to go to Congress. And if he goes to Congress, that means a lot more review. And that means questions maybe about the school that blew up. And that means maybe more strings against his authority. And I don't think he's very interested in that. So I think a longer air campaign where they use the AUMF, the Authorization for Use of Military Force Against Terrorist Organizations, combined with the IRGC's terrorist designation from the Trump administration, is going to be fueling the majority of this air campaign, while Trump engages in rhetorical support to the opposition that he hopes, as the regime continues to weaken, will take over. At the end of the day, if they don't have an atomic weapons program, if they don't have a ballistic missile program, if they're too weak to supply proxies, Trump can try to pursue this without overthrowing the government. But of course, he would like the overthrow of the government. That has become clear at this point. And whether or not the bombing of those police stations were supposed to be taken as a warning or another step on the passageway towards removing the regime, it might be both. It might be both. Trump likes to take a victory when he can get it, but usually if it's easy. The pathway he's chosen here could be quite difficult if he really intends to go into the week-long air campaign that will continue to risk other American personnel. Because if this is a weeks-long campaign, there is a good chance that other American service members will die, and we could get into the double digits of American casualties. And not casualties, we already are in the double digits when it comes to casualties. We'll be in the triple digits when it comes to casualties, in the double digits when it comes to fatalities. In fact, it's not just long-range ballistic missiles, which have lowered in their intensity of those attacks, but it's also, of course, the drone swarms, which have been swarming around, and the possibility of ground attack in places like Iraq. We have seen protests at different embassies, like the protest in the Baghdad embassy. One second. Right here. Now, in Iran, I mean, in Iraq, there are quite a few people who support the Iranian government, particularly in the Shia community and in families that are related or have ties to Kataib Hezbollah and other militias that are directly supplied by the Iranian government and have been in opposition to the United States presence in the country for quite some time. So while these organizations, if they were to take an action against American troops, would meet immense American firepower and repercussions and probably be very disproportionate in any ratio of casualty to casualty effect that they could have, this is something at Iran's disposal. And considering Hezbollah right now is firing rockets into Israel, it is something that you can't not think about. Even if the Iraqi militias have not always fell in line behind the Iranian regime, and they do care about their own survival. Just because the Iranians say jump does not mean they're going to jump. Just because they get weapons from the Iranian government does not mean they're going to do things that would lead to all those weapons immediately evaporating in Iran's interest. They also care about their own interest. The Popular Mobilization Forces is also another example of this. PMF militias. Another example of something like this happening, an instance that was much more deadly, was an instance in Pakistan at the U.S. consulate in a UN building. So at two different points in the country, there's been some confusion about this, but there were 2 points in Pakistan. There was an area around the U.S. consulate when protesters and rioters and eventually people who were armed with guns both fired into the direction of the U.S. consulate, attacked the U.S. consulate, tried to smash it into its windows, either to get inside or to damage it, and rioted outside of the U.S. consulate. We know that 22 people have died, but that was outside the U.S. consulate. There was fatalities. There was also attacks on a UN office at another point of the country by pro-Iran protesters, because Pakistan is a very, very, very diverse country. Not everybody in Pakistan supports Iran, but there are demographics in Pakistan that do support Iran. There's a lot of different language in Pakistan, a lot of different cultures in Pakistan. And that also means that that's come with some difficulty in Pakistan when it comes to like intergroup relations, and also means that there are demographics there that are not going to take kindly to these type of U.S. unilateral decisions. Well, I guess not unilateral. Israel was involved. But here is some footage of the clashes outside the U.S. consulate. In the United States, especially amongst diplomatic leadership, there's a lot of fear of another Benghazi type event when it comes to United States diplomatic buildings. And so allowing protesters, especially pro-Iranian protesters, at this point to take over a building is a no-go scenario for the U.S. government. Here is just 4 videos that were being shared around. Here is another video that was also shown of some of the clashes that was outside of the U.S. consulate. Viewer discretion advised. Hey man, this is I'm a war journalist. Viewer discretion advised. I'm a war journalist. We cover war. Okay, where were we? Oh yes, we were not done. We were not done. I wanted to go through some of the friendly fire incidents, some of the other videos that were going around. Oh, I was talking about the police stations that were targeted. Here is footage of one of the IRGC police headquarters after it was hit by an airstrike. Man. Okay. I want to talk about the friendly fire incidents, which shot down the only American air casualties of the entirety of this war so far, which was 3 fighter jets, 3 F-15 fighter jets, and the pilots that were flying them were able to eject in time. But essentially, there was an air attack on Kuwait, and during this air attack, Kuwaiti air defense mistakenly shot down 3 American fighter jets, 3 F-15s. And after these 3 fighter jets were shot down, in each instance, the American pilot was able to eject in time in order to get out of the vehicle and save their life. And so no American casualties were taken when it comes to personnel, but this is the most significant hardware loss of the American side for the entirety of the conflict. Here is some footage of the jets falling down.
لا والله حربية طيارة حربية طيارة حربية شوف 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 يا واحد شوف هذا المسير يا الربع شوف نزلوا هذول.
Look, they're coming down. They are Iranians. See, that's an interesting statement, isn't it? They are Iranians. Because the Iranians are not doing close flyby bombing runs over Kuwait with F-15 aircraft. The 6 service members that were together in this, because there's 2 in each plane, they ejected. They have nothing to do with Iran. They're American pilots. But the average person in Kuwait doesn't understand all the intricacies of warfare. They just see this. They can't say, oh, that's an F-15, that's American. And so these pilots fall down and they get confronted in the field. And one of the more notorious instances of this, it was getting shared around like crazy on social media, a lot, but mostly out of context. And I'm not even going to dignify all the people. I saw OnlyFans stars posting it without context. I saw people completely unrelated to conflict, people who were partisan about the conflict. But here is footage of one of the American pilots getting confronted by locals. And the reason they confront them so in such a hostile manner is at first they think that the pilot is Iranian. And that was basically the entirety of the hostility that I have found evidence of towards the American pilot. Because I saw this picture of a different angle of the guy holding like the pipe back, like, oh my God, look, like this guy's about to look how the locals are welcoming him. But once they realize he's American and he says, please back up, they all back up, they all remove themselves. They seem to have just mostly been confused and think, hey, you know, all that bombing of Kuwait that's been going on, was that you? Was that you doing that? Was that you? The reason why that apartment building near me got blown up, is that you? But no, that wasn't the case. And there was other instances where you could actually see thankfulness from the locals for the American pilots doing the air defense job in Kuwait.
You're fine? Really? You need something to help you? No problem, you're safe. You're safe. Everything good? No problem. Thank you for helping us. Everything perfect?
Now you got to imagine this woman here gets shot down, hit by hit by an anti-air missile. It hits her craft. Her craft starts to spiral out of control. She's dealing with tons and tons of G-force. She then has to eject. Tons of G-force against her body, trying to stay conscious through all of it. Fucking parachute hits, pulls her down, slowly goes down until eventually cracking her knees on the ground, skidding by, you know, trying to, you know, stay on her feet before popping up once these locals come up to like greet them with a smile. My God, man. You know, some people think women shouldn't be in the armed services. Last video I saw of this was a U.S. fighter pilot being loaded in the back of a civilian vehicle so they could be taken back to command.
Police? Yes. 1 minute. 1 minute. لا لا شبه الدبة. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute.
So far, it doesn't seem that American pilots are getting really any hostility from Kuwaitis unless they think they're Iranian. That seems to be the general consensus, which isn't surprising considering America's record in Kuwait. It's one of the countries in the region that really does support the United States. After, of course, we were participated in the liberation of Kuwait. We were the spear for the liberation of Kuwait after Saddam's invasion. And now, of course, we are heavily involved in Kuwait's air defense. Now, someone could say that the initiation of this air campaign began this back and forth missile strikes. But at the end of the day, the Iranians are the ones launching them to many Kuwaitis. Americans are the ones trying to shoot them down. Okay. Gun out would provoke aggression. Yeah, they do have guns. They have pistols. They're pilots. They're not going to send out pilots out there not to be armed in case of something goes wrong. But they didn't take their guns out because they didn't want to provoke anything with the locals. Because he doesn't know if a local has a gun hidden somewhere, you know? One last thing. I did want to show you something that was interesting. This is the back of one of these jackets. Back of like one of these like little, like, it's not like a jacket, but it's like a piece of fabric that goes with the pilot to be written in Arabic, Farsi, Kurdish, Turkish, English, in case an American pilot is downed. So it's instructions in case the pilot can't communicate to them in their local language of like what to do now that you found this American pilot. And I'll read it to you. I am an American and do not speak your language. I will not harm you. I bear no malice towards your people. My friend, please provide me food, water, shelter, clothing, and necessary medical attention. Also, please provide safe passage to the nearest friendly forces or any country supporting the Americans and their allies. You will be rewarded for assisting me when you present this number and my name to American authorities. Interesting. Okay, it's time to talk about the oil and gas price jump.